Hey, let's talk some Ducks tonight here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. You know the deal. You ultimately produce the show, but in the meantime, I ask the questions, I lead the discussion, and we've got some good ones right here. Spencer McLaughlin, Locked On Pac-12, Locked On Ducks. Join Spencer, of course, in his various ventures and platforms. And, of course, Ryan Winter, Sports Chat 503, two of our finest right here to rep the Pac-12 and the Ducks. Guys, how we doing tonight?
We're ready to rock and roll.
Sweet. Love it. Okay. We drew straws and Spencer drew the long one to get the party started here. So Spencer, you're going to inform us about what Dan Lanning is doing on the recruiting trail right now.
A lot of good things and nothing but good things. 11 commits so far in the 2024 cycle, and 8 of them are 4-star prospects. And the exciting part for Oregon fans right now is not just that those players come from both sides of the ball, an offensive tackle, a wide receiver, a couple of defensive backs. Like, they're very varied at this point in time, but it feels like Lanning and his staff are just kind of getting warmed up. Like, they've just kind of served the appetizer, and the main entree is still coming in this 2024 cycle. And it's still very early in the process, so you'd expect that. But if you told me, sitting here on May 10th that it would be a time in which Oregon's already got, more than 5 blue chip recruits in the 2024 cycle, if you told me that a couple months ago, I'd say things are going pretty well, and things are going pretty well. They've got a quarterback in there, might have another one coming soon with Michael Van Buren. If he ends up choosing the Ducks, Oregon feels like they're in a really good position there to add 2 quarterbacks in the 2024 cycle, which is a fascinating discussion in and of itself. But, they don't even have a 5-star commit yet. They're top 10 in the 2024 recruiting rankings right now. It's still very early in the process, but if you're talking about how Dan Lanning and staff are recruiting, they are prioritizing it at a high level, and they've had some coaching turnover from last year, and it is not slowing them down one single bit. They're just keeping the bus rolling and loading up with as many big-time recruits as they can find.
Hey, if Ryan tells me to ask a particular question and says, Mark, we got to go this route, then we're going to do it. 2 quarterbacks or 1, that's what Ryan's telling us we need to talk about here. 2 or 1 in the recruiting class.
Well, in the transfer portal era, I think it's actually a good idea. I think historically it might have been a little bit of a log jam, and usually you take 1 quarterback and you let it roll. But I think now, these days, with everything, the moving parts you have on these rosters, I think putting 2 quarterbacks, if they both want to be there, let them go. Let them compete. And we'll see what happens, because nothing's guaranteed. You get these kids in on 1 year, and they could be gone the next year. They could be gone in 2 years. They could be gone in 3 years. I think we have an anomaly right now with the fact that Ty Thompson stayed. We know who the backup is. I think that's a rarity among college football. So I'm excited, man. I think that the Ducks are trending, like Spencer said, the Ducks are trending upward.
I think the idea of taking 2 quarterbacks is not only precedented for Oregon, but it's been done pretty recently. Now, it was one-time transfer portal move and give basically unlimited waivers from the NCAA, or at least it feels that way sometimes. And you have, free agency in college football and whatnot. But I think taking 2 quarterbacks, I'm not sure what the downside is. It's not like one player is going to take up a slot that you would have liked to have given to somebody else. Like, there are going to be more than enough talented kids in the 2024 recruiting cycle for the Ducks, like I talked about, and still more to come. I don't think Oregon's even close to done with regards to going after big time prospects. And Ife Obadegwu is a guy who is now their highest rated recruit in the 2024 cycle, but there's still more to come. They're going after some big time names. Elijah Rushing, an edge player, Williams, the linebacker. I keep forgetting if his name is Dylan or Justin, but he's a big time player. And then you've got Brandon Baker, the offensive tackle from Mater Dei, who's a 5-star. Everybody's going after the Oregon's, going after these guys. They feel like they're in a good position, should be able to land a couple as they did in the 2023 cycle. And, I think drafting 2 quarterbacks or taking 2 quarterbacks from the high school ranks is a lot like drafting a quarterback in the NFL. Like, why not take one in the 4th or 5th round? What's your downside? The worst thing that can happen is one of them ends up being a backup quarterback for a few years. Well, backup quarterback could be the difference between you quite literally being able to win a national championship and not. When you look at Ohio State in the inaugural season of the college football playoff, they won with a third string quarterback because they had that sort of depth. They had those players. You never know when something like that's going to come into play, or your starter's going to have to miss a game and whatnot. So I think taking developmental projects, taking guys who you think have real upside is a really logical thing to do. And like Ryan said, in the portal era, you just don't know how long they're going to hang around. So you'd rather have scholarship worthy guys, who have potential to be a starting quarterback one day on your roster. And I think Oregon, by the way, Ryan, you remember this, ran into that problem in 2015 with Vernon Adams, right? It was Vernon Adams, and he was a high level quarterback. He was so good. And then he gets hurt. And what do you have behind him? Taylor Alley, who I think was a walk-on, and he was splitting time with Jeff Locke. Neither one of those guys, Locke just kind of never worked out, but neither one of those guys were able to guide Oregon through that season. Had they been able to, the Ducks might have ended up winning a Pac-12 championship or getting at least to the conference title game. They beat Stanford on the road, which is a top 10 team that season. Like, they were really, really good. But because Adams went down and then they had to roll with, a 2 quarterback system, neither guy was that good. Locke was a better thrower, but not great. Alley more of a runner. Like, you have got to think about backup quarterback as an essential position. Utah is about to learn that, by the way, because Cam Rising might miss the first game against Florida. Like, you have to be prepared for this stuff. And I think, bringing in more guys who have starting potential is something that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you saw that last year when Cam went down for Utah. You saw that with Caleb Williams when he went down with USC. My dad always references the 2007 year when, of course, Dennis Dixon has a Heisman Trophy candidate. And then they ended the year with Justin Roper in the Sun Bowl, and they went through 5 quarterbacks. I mean, it was Masoli was the 5th string. I didn't even know who Masoli was yet. And it's just crazy to think about that you got to have depth. And there are guys who can play. You're always gonna have some walk-ons that they can play the position, but not at the elite level that your top one does. QB1 is QB1 for a reason. And like you said, these days of the transfer portal, these guys want to get out and get to that QB1 spot, even if it's at a lower division, even if it's a smaller school. So Mark, I want to hear what you think. You're always asking us questions. What do you think of the idea of the 2 quarterbacks?
Well, I think it's a difficult line to draw, and it's a difficult place for the head coach to manage, more so than at any time in history, because there used to be a succession pattern. There used to be we've got a senior starter, our number 2 guy's a sophomore, we get him some playing time, he knows that he's going to be the next one in line. There used to be a succession, and there used to be a strategy involving recruiting and signing these quarterbacks and lining them up. But anymore, the tricky part, there are very few teams across the country where that head coach can manage that room well enough to get a number 2 quarterback in play that has experience and has talent, because usually they're going to run. Now, there's a few places where we have that in line, but they're few and far between. Even a place like Texas that's 3 deep at quarterback with ultra talented guys, well, the 2 backups are completely inexperienced. So to get an experienced backup quarterback that is good, that's tough to do in this landscape.
Right. And you get these quarterbacks, like Arch Manning, and he's looking at the landscape. Where can I play? He's not going to the top tier number 1 school because he thinks he can compete on day one. He's going because he thinks he can play on day one, because there's not those other guys there. He's going to compete with the guys in the rest of the room there. I think that's what you had a problem with Alabama for all those years, right? You had Alabama had the greatest college football teams ever with not really the greatest quarterbacks. I mean, look at what Georgia did with Stetson Bennett. I mean, I guess people can talk about Stetson Bennett through a negative light, but he's not Joe Montana, so you have a situation where, some of these guys, they want to go to a big name school. Some of these guys just want to play, and they're more comfortable just going to a spot where they can play. And oftentimes they just try to get the NFL anyway. NFL will find you. Look at Josh Allen, right? I mean, he was at Wyoming. So they're going to find you.
Absolutely. So I outlined your question, and I outlined the issue, but I didn't answer your question in terms of there being an answer. And I think the answer is to go out there and recruit and stockpile the room, because there will be attrition. There will be attrition, but the way you fight attrition is to obviously manage it as well as you can, but to out recruit the attrition. And you see that at places like Georgia and Ohio State, where they stockpile 4 and 5 star quarterbacks. And yes, they do have some attrition, but when you've got 4 of them and 2 leave, well, you still have 2.
Right.
And to Spencer's point, you need a second guy for sure, not just a second guy on the roster. Of course, you need about 4 quarterbacks, but you need a second guy that you are comfortable can bridge you 3 or 4 games or even the remainder of a season and still compete for a conference championship.
If I can jump in, Ryan, I think that's a great weakness for Oregon right now is the backup is Ty Thompson, and in the limited action we've seen from him, he can't command an offense right now, and we're entering year 3 here, and so it's not clicking for him. The light hasn't gone on. Things haven't come together the way that we were all hoping that they would when he initially committed to the Ducks several years ago. And we've now had 3 different offensive coordinators say, yeah, he's not the starting quarterback for the Ducks. And we've seen across 3 different offensive coordinators the same mistakes from Ty Thompson, which is he doesn't read defenses well. He can't make simple throws. He doesn't feel like he's in command of the offense very well. And he doesn't go through his progressions super well. And I don't know how comfortable he looks in the pocket all the time. And he can get a little bit robotic in there. Now, when he makes plays, it looks different than other people, right? When he, hits that deep shot to Chris Hudson in the spring game, that was a big time throw. I mean, there are just not a lot of quarterbacks in the country that can make it. It was a 50 to 60 yard flick, guy in his face, and really didn't have the ability to step into it. He's got the arm talent, the size, and he's, even decently athletic, but it's the quarterback position that is still giving him fits. And I just think that he's, at the point where it feels like this is kind of what he is. Like, I can't think of another quarterback. Ryan, you've been around longer than I have, who's needed 3 years in college before he was, capable of looking like a starting quarterback. Because, Tyler Shuck wasn't great at Oregon, but in the 1 year he was a starter, it was the COVID year, he was serviceable, right? And he'd sat for 2 seasons behind Justin Herbert. But then when he took the reins, he was a little rough around the edges, but he didn't look like he was ever not in command or not in control of the offense. And he won road games. Now, there weren't, fans in the stands that particular year, but he made plays, executed the offense, made simple throws, made some good reads, made some bad reads as well. But he just seemed like after 2 seasons of sitting on the bench, he was so much further along than where Ty Thompson appears to be. And think of, the prototypical backup quarterback, Brian Bennett. Like, anytime Brian Bennett came into the game, Ryan, Darren Thomas was really good. I mean, a really, really good quarterback for the Ducks. But when Thomas went down with an injury, I think it was against Arizona State, ASU was a top 25 team, came into Autzen Stadium, and Bennett led them to a win when Thomas went down with an injury. And then he started the next week and had no issues whatsoever with a bad Washington State team. They curb stomped him, right? And it just doesn't feel like Ty has that capability right now. And I think that's why you have to be in the 2 quarterback mindset from a year-to-year roster standpoint. You need at least 2 guys who are capable of executing it. I'm not expecting your backup to be as good or productive as your starter, but look at what Oregon State did this last year with a backup quarterback. You got to have a team around that quarterback, a defense like the Beavs had that can support a more limited starter at quarterback. But Ben Gulbranson went 6-1, 7-1 after Chance Nolan went down. Like that's what you need. And was Gulbranson carrying the load? No, he wasn't, but he was able to do enough. And it just feels right now that Ty Thompson still can't do enough. And it is a testament to his character that he's still at Oregon. And I'm fascinated to see what happens next offseason, because right now, if I told you who's starting for Oregon in 2024, nobody's got that answer.
Gulbranson did a remarkable job, especially handing the ball off 19 consecutive times against you guys during that comeback. That was phenomenal.
Hey, thanks, Mark. The PTSD is real on that one. I literally walked out of that.
Look at how we're getting treated here, Ryan. We take the time to come on Mark's show, and here he is. Lighting the cannon and firing shots across the bow like it's Pirates of the Caribbean out here.
It was right there for me. So I just couldn't resist.
it is what it is, you know. I mean, you got to tip the cap
Connor
to
loves
them.
it.
You know, I don't know. I look at it from a variety of different angles, and the one thing is we're talking about who the quarterbacks are kind of coming in. Most of these quarterbacks are all transferring in. Look at the whole Pac-12 right now. Caleb Williams transfer, Penix transfer, Cam Ward transfer, Bo Nix transfer,
Cam Rising, by the way, one-time
Texas, right? DJ, Jaden DeLora transferred in conference. Shedeur Sanders transfer. I mean, you know, these guys. So it's like the best. We were talking about how great the quarterback league is right now at Oregon or at Pac-12. They're all transfers. All those guys, and we're happy to have them out here. But none of those guys got recruited by the schools that they're playing at, which is kind of an interesting thing as well to talk about the transfer portal. So not only do you have to bring in guys who are, you know, freshmen who you possibly could project to be a starter someday, but you also have to bring in guys knowing you probably are going to bring in another older guy to compete with that younger guy at some point and see what they have to do, which is kind of an interesting way to look at things, because if you're a young guy, you probably have this idea that somebody's going to try to take your job at any point, at any time during your career. And I think that's probably a good thing overall for college football, for the competition's sake, because these guys are all trying to get an opportunity. And you're one opportunity away. Look at Michael Penix. This guy might be looked at as one of the best quarterbacks in the whole country next year because of one good year behind. He wasn't. Yeah. What was he at Indiana, right? He goes to Washington.
It was 4 years marred by injuries and inconsistency.
For sure. So now all of a sudden his draft stock's way up, you know. And but go back to the Ty Thompson thing for a second. I don't really know what we have in Ty either, because limited sample size, pretty vanilla when he's in there. He's had some spring games. He hasn't looked that sharp, but he kind of felt like he put it together the second half of that spring game. Like you said, made some throws that look good. We hear the thing, great in practice. I've heard that for years. Oh, coach, man, I was just so good in the shoot around today. Yeah, right. You're shooting 20% from the field. It's good in practice, not on the floor. So the idea around the quarterback is it's everybody's favorite position. Everybody's going to look at it. Everybody's going to analyze it. And everybody else is holding the clipboard besides the starter. So you better come prepared during fall camp, try to get that gig. And then you're also one play away. Every single one of these guys, one play away from injury, and they're getting the next gig. So,
yeah, Ed had a good point, by the way, in the comment section that Stetson Bennett took like 5 years or so to become a good starting quarterback. I feel like that. I mean, it's valid, right? He didn't start right away. He wasn't a big time recruit, though. He was fighting just to play for that particular team, and then kind of started out of necessity because JT Daniels got hurt and whatnot. But you know, with Ty, it's just one of those things that, look, maybe the light will go on, but it's pretty clear to us that it hasn't yet. I mean, you've had 2 full off seasons now on campus at the college football Power 5 level, and you came out in the spring game and your first 2 throws were a swing pass and a wheel route, and they both got batted down at the line of scrimmage. One should have been a pick 6.
Right.
And when I watch other quarterbacks go, I don't see those same sorts of mistakes. So I haven't been encouraged yet. His second half was encouraging, but then why does it take that long, right? Like why do you need a half to settle in? You're not, you know, Austin Novosad is a true freshman out there. This is a guy who's playing in his 3rd spring game as an Oregon football quarterback. This is a guy who's been on the field during live game action before. Like it should look crisper than that when it goes on. Because remember, Mariota redshirted his first year, so I'm always inclined to give everybody 1 year. But Mariota redshirted, then his second year, ready to start, goes 13-1. And Justin Herbert comes in, doesn't start right away. But then when he sees the field, like, he was making some freshman mistakes. I'm not expecting you to be perfect, but he could execute and run the offense. And the offense in 2016 was good. The defense was just putrid, of course.
Right.
I'm still trying to figure out what quarterback gets a wheel route throw batted down.
Well, but here's the other one that was what I was really telling for me was that first play of the scrimmage. Mace Funa read it completely, and he knew exactly what the offense was doing. But Ty didn't know anything of what the defense was doing. So it was like, as soon as he hiked that ball, he threw it right in. He's like, wait a minute. What are you doing there?
And sometimes the complete anomaly, the needle in the haystack, proves the point. And so, Spencer, your point is actually proven by somebody having to go to Stetson Bennett, because who else can you find? That it took that long, and then they finally turned out to be a really good quarterback. So that the aberration proves the point.
Yeah, but he turned out to be a really good quarterback with the best defense the college football's ever had.
That's true.
Back-to-back years. That helps.
It
That
does.
helps. It's like the pitcher who's got the best defense behind him. I don't know. These Cy Youngs, man. I don't know what happens here.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I see that it's a valid point.
But the other thing is also it is a cerebral sport. It is a position that you need to know what the hell's going on. And a lot of these guys talented guys come out of high school not ready to process it. And that's what they said about Ty right away. Processing speed was slow. We needed to kind of get some reps, get some quality looks, be able to see a wide variety of defenses. And to Spencer's point, you haven't seen that really click. And I think that's the big difference. When you see the quarterback on the field, looking the Peyton Manning, Omaha, just making calls, doing the thing, setting up the offense the right way. You see some quarterbacks, they just go through the motions, take whatever plays out there and run through it. They're not prepared. So I do see a major drop off the difference between Bo and Ty. But if Bo goes down, I do think at least you know what you have in Ty. I did, though, see Ty at the spring game, right next to whatever. He has been taking advantage of the weights. The weight room has definitely helped him. The guy is large.
He's got no physical limitations. None. Novosad needs to get on that. Novosad needs to get on that plan, right? Like Novosad's thin. Novosad looked like if Jordan Birch fell on him, he would crunch like an ant under a boot, right? But again, I liked what I saw from Novosad. Don't get me wrong, but like the weight room, the eating plans they put these guys on to bulk them up a bit. He definitely needs to do that, or he could struggle to stay healthy. But his arm looked good, his mobility looked good. I thought his pocket presence actually looked all right. So I think Oregon is going to have options at quarterback, right? Because there's always the portal, and they might add 2 guys in the 2024 class. They're going to have options at quarterback going forward. It's just a question of who's going to emerge as the leader in the clubhouse going into next season, which is just the most off-season question for me to pose on here. We haven't even gotten to fall camp in 2023, and I'm out here asking the question, well, in 2024, who's the quarterback going to be? Do we even know? Should we start talking about the battle?
Well, let's talk about 2023 for just 1 second. You talked about Tyler Shough. We'll see his development this year.
He's
so
it's a solid starter, by the way. He's nothing special.
Battled injuries, hasn't been that consistent.
Like if he were starting in, I think he got a much better player, of course, in Bo Nix. But if Tyler Shough were a starting quarterback at a Pac-12 school, he could probably he'd certainly start for Stanford. He might start for Cal. He'd probably start. Actually, that might be it. Well, UCLA, he'd have a chance to compete at least for the starting job. But like, he's a serviceable Power 5 quarterback. But I think at Oregon, we're trying to go beyond serviceable. That's kind of that's like the low end of the spectrum that we're shooting for.
Well, I mean, go back to that 07 year. We had Chris Harper as a quarterback. He had a torn shoulder. He couldn't throw the ball. He was the number 2 quarterback in that Chip Kelly system that was just going to run it. It was just going to be a wildcat.
Yeah, basically on every play. Yeah, Roper was the 5th quarterback. It was
I think Masoli was the 5th. I think Roper
was Roper 4.
Yeah, I think Roper, but I mean that was just an absolute mess. That was
Dennis Dixon,
Brady Leaf still there?
Dennis Dixon, Brady Leaf,
so
Chris
Brady
Harper,
was second, and then Chris
Justin
Harper, and then Roper, and then you had Masoli, and then there's somebody else out there. But yeah, I mean, my dad always references that where he says, "Hey, that year they had 5 quarterbacks go. Everybody went down, and you needed somebody to play back there." So, with the Ducks went and got Matt Rush. I mean, there's a guy who's a senior who's going to be maybe if everything goes bad, maybe he would get playing time. He didn't even play really in the spring game, so it's like you're not going to get that much out of it. But everybody loves the quarterback discussion. I thought that'd be an interesting one.
Well, it's a great discussion for Oregon. It's a great discussion within the Pac-12 because we saw this league dominated that position. And what I thought was the best position in all of college football at quarterback turned out to be the Pac-12. I thought it was going to be the ACC. It turned out to be the Pac-12, and it's all lined up to be the same coming up this season. And, of course, that's going to have a lot to do with what these win totals look like when it's all said and done. So as we run these down, what jumps out, starting with the Ducks at 9.5, USC right there as well at 9.5.
Well, the numbers can be altered a little bit depending on where you look, and it's interesting to see how different books evaluate these schools. So if you look on FanDuel, Oregon and USC are the same at 9.5. Washington is also at 9.5. UCLA, Utah, 8.5. Oregon State is also at 8.5 on FanDuel. Washington State, 6.5. That's the same. But Arizona, Arizona State, and Cal are all at 4.5. So I'm interested on the 5 and 5.5 totals for the Arizona schools here. Arizona was the easiest over bet last year. Their win total was 2.5, and I looked at that and said, "Oh, give me the over all day long." And that was one of the few over under picks that I was correct on a season ago. They ended up winning 5 games, of course, but 5.5. That's a big number for Arizona, but let's be real. The most interesting team on this entire list is Colorado and Coach Prime with an over-under of 3. On FanDuel, it's 3.5. Buffs fans and the big, Coach Prime lovers out there have to be just losing their minds or licking their chops maybe because it's whiteboard material at the thought of them being a 3.5 over-under win team. But I think is a testament that Vegas agrees with what I've said about Colorado for the last several months, which is they are bringing in a lot of talent, and that is exactly what Coach Prime needs to do. But they are not a USC type of reboot or a UCLA transfer portal class or Oregon or anybody like that. There was no inherent level of talent, depth, and success that the team had that they're building upon. They are literally starting from scratch. I mean, they were not a Power 5 caliber football team a year ago. They got housed. They got housed, not beaten, housed by Air Force, right? Respectable, Mountain West school, Air Force. Okay, they got absolutely blasted. It was like 41-17. So when you're starting from that low, even if you bring in the amount of talent that Coach Prime is bringing in, you can't expect to fix it all in 1 year. He's got him trending in the right direction. I think their rebuild will take place quicker than Arizona State's will, and they might even pass Arizona depending on how the Wildcats do this year. But I think Colorado down at 3. I'm tempted to lean over 3.5, but I don't think Colorado could win more than 5 games this year, and I think they'd be more likely to have 3 or 4 than they would being 5 or more.
Yeah.
I always start with, go ahead, Ryan.
No, please go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say, I always start with what hits me in the face, what just jumps out at me. And then I'm going to take the deep dive and I'm going to go a little bit deeper. And I'll thank my guy, Steve Dace on Michigan Podcast, because I never used to touch for as much as I'm into predictions, predicting the season and predicting the games week to week, and have been logging my records for longer than I would like to admit. I never did over-unders, but Steve Dace would bring me on Michigan Podcast and throw them in my face, and I'd have to make calls on them. So I thought, okay, well, I hit on a number of these. So for the last couple of years, I've done them. Well, these were released a few days ago. We went live a couple nights ago, and so I was curious, and I looked at my video from last year. So I made 8 total picks last year. The first 5, I hit on 3 out of the 5. So I'm sitting at 3-2, and then what jumped out at me was Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, 10.5. And I'm like, come on here. Over on all 3. You grab all 3, you take the over, because if you hit on 2 out of the 3, which I can almost guarantee is going to happen, then you're good to go. Well, of course, they go 12-0, 12-0, 11-1, good to go. And we go 6-2 on the over-unders. So what slaps me in the face out of the first glance there? UCLA 8.5. They've got to go 9-3 to lose the under call. And I don't know if I see UCLA going 9-3 this year. If that team last year went 9-3 with DTR.
No, they went 8-4. No, they were. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were 9-3 a year ago, and then they lost their bowl game.
Yeah,
and they ended the year 9-4. I agree with you, Mark. I think the 2 that I like the most, I would go to FanDuel. Shameless plug for our sponsor at the Locked On Podcast Network. I would go to FanDuel. I would go to Stanford's 3.5, and I would hammer the under. I think Stanford is a long rebuild. They were 3 wins a year ago. I can't see how they are better given that they have a less certain quarterback situation. They don't have Tanner McKee. They're undergoing a quarterback battle. One of the guys is Ari Patu, who was a Wildcat guy for them a year ago. I do not see Stanford. I'd have to double check their schedule, but I know they've got Notre Dame on there as one of their non-conference games. I can pull up their schedule right now, but I like
at Hawaii, Sacramento State.
I could see them. Sacramento State's going to be playing motivated as an FCS school because Troy Taylor was Sacramento State's head coach. I could see them potentially losing that
always
game.
A difficult one to start the year.
But Hawaii is the game that I would really look for. But if you just go down the conference slate for Stanford, yeah, I would. Yeah, see the under being 3.5, under 3.5 at -170 versus the over at +138. I think that tells you that FanDuel at least agrees with what I'm saying, that the under is the sharp side there. And Mark, I am also with you on UCLA. They were a 9-3 football team last year. They've added some great pieces in the portal. They've done that very well once again. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson was not a good quarterback. He was a great quarterback a season ago. He was a great playmaker. And I've long thought that UCLA more than Oregon State feels like a pullback team. I think UCLA is a 7-8 win team. I cannot see them getting to 9, but that is contingent upon what their non-conference schedule is, because I don't think it's particularly strong.
No, Coastal Carolina, San Diego State, NC Central.
That San Diego State game could end up deciding it.
And it's at San Diego State.
But even with 3 wins there, they go 6-3 against the Pac-12.
Yeah, I don't think I see that.
And they got to go at Utah. They got to go at Oregon State.
They do miss Oregon, but playing the Beavs at Reser is tough. But their other road games in conference, they've got 2 tough ones and 2 less tough ones. They have to go at Stanford, who we were just talking about is not very good. They have to go at Arizona, who almost beat them did beat them in the Rose Bowl last year. And then their other road games are USC and Utah. So they've got 5 conference road games. And when you play an odd number, that's something I look for in these over-under win totals, is who has to play 5 conference road games and who has to play 4. Because, the conference, I'm sure, alternates it and makes it, as balanced as they can, or else people would raise hell on that front. But that is not, to me, in any way a scheduling break for UCLA. They're either going to be starting Ethan Garbers, Colin Schley, the Kent State transfer, or true freshman Dante Moore for their first Pac-12 game at Utah, where nobody's won with fans in the stands since like 2018. So I don't see him winning that game. And then if all I need to do is find 3 other losses in conference play at USC, I don't see him winning that. Oregon State on the road, I don't see him winning that. And then do you really think they're going to go perfect between Washington State, Stanford, Colorado, Arizona State, and Cal?
No.
I don't think I don't think so.
Arizona schools will get them, and I think Colorado might get them. That's one of the games that I see Colorado could be an opportunity for them, because I don't see many wins on Colorado's schedule either.
No.
And but every year you have one of those games where somebody shows up and somebody beats a team that they shouldn't beat, and it's a weird situation.
Yeah. And to Spencer's first point, San Diego State has held up well against the Pac-12.
Yeah,
we know that historically.
Not a slouch team, by the way. No. Off of a down year by the Aztec standards, but when they are good, they beat the 2021 Pac-12 champion Utah Utes. Like, we're going through the schedule and saying, well, what if they go 3-0? I don't think that's a given, right? They won't lose. Well, I don't know. Coastal Carolina, I don't keep up on the Chanticleer super often, but Dustin Johnson's alma mater has put together a good football team a time or two. The other school that they play, who's their other non-conference game?
We've got Coastal Carolina, San Diego State, and North Carolina Central, the mighty Eagles. Okay,
so North Carolina Central is a win. Coastal Carolina is probably a win. I'd say 60-40 they beat San Diego State, but I don't think that's a done deal whatsoever. But Yeah, those would be the two unders that I would hammer the most. Is UCLA under 8.5 and Stanford under 3.5.
Mike Black is checking in. Mike from Ducks and Dogs podcast. Mike, what's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. Hope you guys are doing well.
What is going on over there?
No, it's just my brother.
I'll take the over.
He's coming to hang out with the kittens. I actually have one sitting right on the keyboard as I was trying to join here.
All right. Cats usually make videos go viral. So whatever you have to do there, Mike, we're all for it. Good stuff. We're going through win totals. Mike, I don't know if you've seen them for the Pac-12. We'll pull them up here, see if anything stands out to you. And if anyone can teach me the StreamYard strategy of transitioning from screen to screen without going full, then I will take it. But let's see. We've got, well, this is the complicated Spencer suggested FanDuel board, but you do get the
over and under
line. But if we just want to pull up the, hang on just a second, we just pull up the numbers themselves. Then we've got,
in the meantime, Mark, the one I would stay away from that I think is appropriately set, Washington State at 6.5. I wouldn't touch it with a 20-foot pole. I wouldn't touch it with a 100-foot pole.
6 and 6, 7 and 5. Yeah, that's
that feels right. I mean,
yeah.
Unless you want to sweat, I think Washington State is at most, like their uppermost ceiling, probably 8, maybe 9 wins, but they feel to me like a 6 to 7 win team. That's where I kind of had a feel. I'm curious what you think, Mike, but I would stay away from Washington State at 6.5 at all costs.
So who have you guys already touched on?
Well, we took the deep dive on UCLA.
UCLA, Stanford, and a little bit on Colorado as well. We're under on UCLA and Stanford.
I want the over on Colorado. Surprisingly enough, I will take the over on Colorado. Washington State's a perfect line. That I wouldn't touch that.
Yep.
I'd actually go over on Arizona State too.
Well, Colorado's got to go 2 and 10 for you to lose. So I'm there with Mike, I think, on that one.
Would you take it? What would you make of a 3.5 line, which is what it's on at FanDuel? Because obviously you could push if they go 3 and 9.
So I think it's very likely that they go 4 and 10. Obviously, the next likely is probably going to be 3 and 9 before it's 5 before it's 5 wins. It's probably going to be 3 wins, but I just think the likelihood that they win 4 of those games on that schedule is high enough for me to take the over on a 3.5 too.
Their schedule is tough, though, is where I get frisky with Colorado.
We're overrating that TCU team. They lost a lot, and it's not like that's a team that pulls in talent every single year.
True.
It's like that Cincinnati team who lost a lot, and then they saw a significant enough drop-off to where teams could beat them. So, like, that's not a guaranteed loss as much as we're making it out to be.
TCU is also a 23.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I'd take Colorado with the points.
Well, on my Pac-12 prime picks last year, I also rode Colorado in week 1 as a 14.5-point home underdog against TCU, only to see them lose by, I think it was 27 or so. Yeah. And they started 0-5 against the spread, and they were at least a two touchdown underdog in every one of those games. But
I'm taking them straight up against Nebraska.
That's the interesting one to me. I think that is the most telling game, because going at TCU is just like, it's going to be tough. Off the national championship, they're going to be buzzing. They're a pullback team in the Big 12 for sure, but pulling back from 13-2 or 12-2, whatever they were, is what, like probably 8-4, 9-3, somewhere in there. And Colorado is not
2015 Oregon that.
Yeah, well, okay, that's true. I don't see. But even Oregon had the 2015 season, right, before the 4-8 Crater year, where until it all really bottomed out. And I think TCU is at least good enough to be a plus 500 team. And I don't think Colorado goes in there and gets the win. But Nebraska is also rebuilding. They also stunk last year. And so then the question is, Coach Prime against Matt Rule, who's got the better X's and O's chops?
See, I don't even know if it comes down to X's and O's chop. It's just like, in games like that where the talent's not drastic, obviously Nebraska is a slightly more talented team, I think, on the 247 composite. Yeah, but it comes down to big playmakers. And For some reason, I just feel like the combo of Travis Hunter, and if Cormani plays a lot, I don't know how much he's going to play his freshman year. He does need to bulk up a little bit. I covered him in high school a lot. He's a really good player. I think the combination of those guys, and I actually liked a couple of their portal gets on the defensive line. You just, in games like that where you don't know who's going to win, I think whoever's got the better playmakers who can make a game-breaking play is who I take most of the time.
The football people would tell you to look at the line play, though. They would tell you to go the line play over the game breakers. And I would also say I'm going to put a little bit more confidence in Jeff Sims over somebody I've never seen play against a Power 5 team.
I think that's valid. All you have to do, Mark, if you want to get Colorado fans all riled up, is just repeat that take every single day on your show until the end of time, and they will come for you.
All right. I'm going to script it out, and we're going to produce a video as soon as we get wrapped up here and throw it out there. Absolutely.
By the way, we somehow on the Oregon channel of your show here, Mark, haven't talked about the Ducks at 9.5, which that's an encouraging thing to me, because that's a big number in a conference that is really, really deep. And I think that means Vegas thinks that we'll go and beat Texas Tech and probably
5-0. Yeah.
Probably start 5-0. Because it's
5-0.
Because it's Colorado and Stanford to start. Should be a 5-0 beginning, and then you get into the meat of the schedule. That stretch there, I think, is the toughest 3-game stretch off the bye. At Washington, Cougs at home, who are always tough and feisty, and then at Utah. I think you go 2-1 in that stretch, you're doing pretty well.
I would say so. My big thing is, if you can get through, if you, like you said, 5-0, and you got that Husky game, get that bye before the Husky game. That's a big deal this year. And if you beat Washington, buddy, 6-0 with the Cougs coming to town, we've seen some weird things, man. We've seen some really weird things with the Cougs. And if you're an old Duck fan, you know PTSD, undefeated teams playing the Cougs at home. We've seen some weird stuff go on there. I don't expect it this year, but the Utah game to me is a huge one. That's the game I'm trying to go to. That's the game that I think we built the beautiful rivalry with them. They beat us, we beat them, back and forth kind of a thing. And it's just about that. And then, of course, I think everybody's going to pick the USC game as the biggest game of the year. But if Oregon can beat Washington, beat Oregon State, what they didn't do last year, then I think it's 10 wins easy.
I would rather beat USC than beat Oregon State.
Would you really?
Yeah, Oregon State. So I know it's a young fan take, and me and Ryan have argued this before. I could care less about Oregon State as a rival.
Wow.
I root for them 11 weeks a year.
Do you not have any like close friends who are Oregon State fans?
I live in Florida.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It stings a little more when you're in the building out here,
Mike. You're young, yes, I get it, but you're not 12 years old. Oh, come on.
But I think what that speaks to is also
it's just never been close. Like in my life, they've
point.
won a couple games.
Close last year.
They
won last year. But is everybody we lost to last year a rival? Is Georgia a rival? No.
But my point being is that a good rivalry should go back and forth, and we haven't had that for a while. And Oregon State this year is a team to watch out for. I think I'm with you. The older I get, the more I root for Oregon State when they're not playing Oregon. But that makes me want to puke. I also, though, really dislike USC now.
In my lifetime,
I never not liked UCLA or UCLA for any other reason. The fact that they just weren't the Ducks. Now I actually dislike them. I feel like I'm a girlfriend that's been broken up with. They invited me to prom and they pulled the invite or something, and I'm pissed. And I've never really felt that feeling before, and now I'm actively pissed against them and somewhat root against them. So I definitely kind of agree with that take almost this year. That Mike, this year I want to beat USC. I want the Ducks to beat USC so badly. If they don't, whatever. USC will probably be really good, but I can't say that I'd rather lose to the Bees. That one is rough.
For me, growing up mid 2000s, late 2000s, 2010s, USC's been the team we've gone back and forth with and won and lost and won and lost. It's Oregon State. They beat us like every couple of. It's like playing Cal. Like I don't care.
No, it's
Like,
not
I
like
will
playing
watch the
Cal.
game.
No, I
It's
It's like playing
Oregon
Cal.
State.
It's like playing Cal.
I
Except Cal's probably
completely
better on
disagree.
average.
I think it's you grew up in Florida, right, Mike?
I have lived in 13 states.
Okay, gotcha. But when was the last time you lived in Oregon?
2011.
So I think that's the contributing factor here, because when you're up in the state, like if you're actually
Yeah, when
there,
I
I'm
lived
not
there,
I'm
it was
not
in the
trying
middle
to
of nowhere.
I'm
I was
not
on a
trying
ranch. There was nobody. It
no,
was just us.
and by the way, I'm not trying to say like you're not a real Duck fan or
I get
anything like that. But
Core fan. I
when
think
you're in the state and you have to go out and see Beaver fans, or you have to,
live
deal
them. I
with
got
them in
family
person.
members.
I've got a lot of close personal friends from my hometown that are Beaver fans, and that smack talk is very real, and it happens every single year, regardless of what happens. Now, all
Mother's Day this weekend. It's my wife's side. It's not my
Yeah.
side of it. But Mother's Day, I'm going to hear it.
Yeah. So I will see your point with regards to it hasn't been, there hasn't been as much back and forth, but for me, it's never mattered. Like beating the Beavs every year. Does it feel the same as beating Washington when they're good? No, because Oregon State's never been consistently good the way Washington has been for the last 8 years or so. But every year beating the Beavs, yes, it's an expectation and more of like an annoyance when you lose than a crushing disappointment, though it certainly was with the way it transpired this past year. But there's still that element of, yeah, okay, when I beat the Beavs, it doesn't feel like beating Cal or even Utah for that instance. Like, we've got a rivalry with Utah of sorts, but it's not heated. I don't hate Utah fans. I don't get annoyed with them or anything like that. And I, live in Utah, so I know a lot of them. I think they're great. That Oregon State game does feel different to me.
Yeah, and Oregon State hates the Ducks. I would say one other thing. It kind of feels like, because it comes to the holiday season, losing to Oregon State is like not getting a gift on Christmas. Beating Oregon State is just like opening another gift.
See, I had uncles who went there and they all rooted for the Ducks. So
it's not like
it
it's
was
the
never
best gift ever, but it is a gift and you appreciate it. But you definitely feel it if you didn't get one. You're looking around the table and you're like, everybody got a gift, but what happened there? That's the feeling of getting kicked in the
Here's my own personal college football correlation for you. Ohio State fan here, beat Michigan 15 out of 16 years. And some Ohio State fans would tell you that the one didn't even count because it was an interim coach. We had missing 5 of our best players. Luke Fickell was coaching. The NCAA screwed us. We didn't even have to have our team.
And they're still a rival.
So
we
basically
have Washington we beat most of the time.
No, not just a rival. No.
Won't even say their name.
15 consecutive years. So basically winning 15 out of 16, or in my world, 15 consecutive years, still the most hated rival on the schedule. Have to beat them. Obsessed with them. Have to beat them. And it still is not even without question.
Well, also in my life, we've beaten Washington most years. I still consider them a rival. Oregon State's just not Washington or Michigan or anything.
But Mike, you're probably of the era where Washington's a bigger rival than Oregon State.
Yeah, Washington, USC. I dislike Utah more. I dislike Washington State more. Okay. Both of the Arizona schools more.
It's all good. Hey, on that note, I'm gonna go throw up in the garbage can. Mike. Hey, I gotta do my own live stream, not to plug my channel, but I gotta
absolutely plug your channel.
Appreciate y'all, Mike. Thank you, dude. It's so good to see you. Mike and I chilled in Atlanta. We had some winks together. We were in the building together. Spencer,
you guys endured the misery of 49-3.
Yeah.
The peaches were good. Bought me drinks. I was chilling.
The peaches were good. Yeah. Spencer, you're the man. Appreciate you so much. And of course, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. Nobody does it better, Mark. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you.
Next time.
All right. Good stuff from Ryan. Where do we go from here? Any other over-unders you guys wanted to hit on? I'll toss them back up.
I found the Arizona schools fascinating because there is a pretty sizable discrepancy between where did On3 get those numbers from? Maybe like was it DraftKings?
Yes, I believe.
On3 or one?
No, On3 published the DraftKings lines, but the FanDuel lines for Arizona, Arizona State, and Cal all at 4.5.
Cal under.
Okay, let me.
I disagree. I would go.
Under.
I'm not kidding. I'd go Cal over.
Cal could have 2, and I'd say under because I don't like Cal.
No, I do not think Cal goes under 4.5. I think they go over. I think they could be a 6-win team this year. People are gonna call me
Really?
crazy, but
Who do they play?
I'm gonna die on this hill.
They must play Portland State 5 times then.
They've got two easy games, and their one non-conference game is Auburn, randomly enough. Auburn in Berkeley, though.
Auburn.
Yeah, it's
I'm not
winnable.
saying it's a great home field advantage, but you don't have to go down to SEC country. And look, Cal is never they're never going to be great with Justin Wilcox, but they're never going to be terrible. That's what they've been.
They weren't terrible last year.
No, they weren't a terrible. They weren't a
They
terrible.
lost to
team.
Colorado. They went 4-8.
Oh no, they weren't. No, they weren't a good team. Don't get me
They
wrong.
walked into wins.
But they were not a terrible football team.
They were terrible.
No, I don't think they were a terrible football team. And I think they're better at quarterback this year than last year, which
I
is
might
the
have taken
biggest thing.
IMG to beat them last year.
Well, last year they rolled out Jack Plummer at quarterback, and I didn't think that was a great move. But this year they brought in Sam Jackson from TCU, and they've got a new offensive coordinator as well, who has had some success at Cal before and brings a completely different offensive philosophy. Now, their O-line was really bad last year, but they've rebuilt it a bit through the transfer portal. You know, their defense is going to at least be solid, and they've got a couple of decent offensive pieces, more than a couple, actually. They brought in Byron Cardwell. You and I know that, Mike. And look, Cardwell's nothing like super duper special, but a solid running back for sure, like a contributor in the room. Jaden Ott was already really good. They brought in a running back from Tennessee, so their backfield is good. Their quarterback position is going to be more explosive than it has been. They've got Jeremiah Hunter on the outside. They always seem to find solid tight ends, and their defense is solid. So if their new OC, Jake Spavital, who comes over from Texas State after he was let go there as their head coach, if he can find some success with the new offensive philosophy, Cal's defense is always going to be at least competent enough to keep you in football games. This is a Cal team, by the way. Even with Jack Plummer, by the way, they took USC and UCLA down to the final possession. Both of them.
Now, with your Auburn thing, I think they're just as likely to lose to North Texas as they are to win to Auburn, because North Texas, albeit their records haven't been great, they have a pretty dangerous team quite often.
I'll agree with that. I don't think you can completely sleep on them there. And I'd feel better about this schedule if you swap the Idaho and the North Texas games. But Cal last year took the LA schools down to the final possession, only lost by 7 to Washington, who was a really good team, and had a bad day for sure against Colorado, which was kind of like the most predictable. That was the only team schedule that I got right all 12 games last year was Colorado. I was like, they're losing all of these games, but they're going to beat Cal because that's a Cal thing to do, and they're on the road and whatnot. But I'm telling you, I think that Cal team can be bowl eligible this year.
I'm thinking they're starting, just looking at what Mark has pulled up, I'm thinking they're starting 1-6.
No way.
1-7. I didn't see USC next. 1-7. Like
at Oregon.
Here's
after that.
Like I can't see that many wins here, man.
Cal is going to pull
over 4.
Going to pull at least one upset this year. No, I said over 4.5.
Okay,
so
so 5 wins.
Okay.
Right. I'm going to
Auburn would be an upset.
5.
That's the one upset.
Idaho is going to be a win. North Texas is going to be a win. Arizona State at home, I think, is going to be a win. I think they're capable of beating Auburn. Not sure if they will, but I think they can beat Washington State at home as well. And I think they pull one upset of Washington, USC, Oregon, Oregon State, or Utah.
Half of the games you listed would be their upsets.
Yes, no, they have a tough schedule because the Pac-12 schedule is tough writ large. But between all the biggest names on there, Auburn,
I can see 3.
Washington, Oregon State, Utah, USC, Oregon, I think they will find a way to win one of those games. They were this close to doing it last year.
Our buddy Tim is saying the Cal game was not close. They scored 14 super late on a bomb against backups and an onside kick against backups. Cal is bad.
It was a late run. They were getting beat pretty badly.
Yeah, but they were capable of making the late run because they actually had some weapons. Losing J. Michael Sturdivant hurts the offense, though.
Making late runs against PWOs is like, sure.
I don't think it was PWOs because once you scored, if you're up big, once the team scores one touchdown, you put your starters back in. USC's defense was putrid all season long. We saw that in the Pac-12 championship game and twice against Utah last season. That's just what they were. They looked like they had preferred walk-ons out there all the time.
So I think that even helps my argument more if they only did that against a bad defense, a really bad defense. That was
right,
bad
but not everybody you play is going to have a great defense. By the way, Stanford is on their schedule, obviously, because they're Cal.
Are they?
Sure.
Yeah, Stanford has to be. I think when we scrolled down, we stopped at the Washington.
Yes.
Yeah. Stanford, and they've got UCLA on there. Okay, so the Stanford game being in, I think they are a much better team than Stanford. I think
much better.
I think they have got far more playmakers right now. Stanford's got nothing in the cupboard. Cal's actually able to bring in transfers, and Stanford cannot.
I mean,
so
now
that
Stanford's going to be better on that line.
Now that we have this revelation Mark discovered of scrolling down to the bottom of the schedule, I feel even better about it.
Yes. Spencer was trying to find 5 wins in the first 8 games. That was kind of difficult.
A little bit.
I was like, Spencer, you can't find 5 wins here.
Yeah, I could see at absolute most, I could be convinced of 4.
I'll take over 4.5.
Oh,
that's what I'll say. I think Cal goes over 4.5.
I think I would stick to what I said earlier. I'd take under on a 3.5 line.
Just know we will revisit this conversation when I pick them to beat Auburn at home this year.
Ooh.
Listen, my boy Robbie Ashford. I've been a Robbie Ashford stan. You know this, Spencer. I ain't rooting against Ashford.
I do. I think
that's my dog.
Ashford is, whose mom is very nice, by the way. I've engaged with her in Twitter Spaces. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady and whatnot.
I'm sorry to the Cardwells. They let me hang out with the team.
You were engaging with Robbie Ashford's.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like right around the time that I started hosting Locked On Ducks. Okay. I was, trying to get my name out there and then profile the show and everything. So I just go hang out in Oregon Twitter Spaces, and I go in there one night, and Robbie Ashford's mom, while he was still on the roster, was just in there chatting it up with fans, answering questions, being like, "Hey, what did Robbie think about this or that or the other thing?" It was really, really fun.
She would talk smack in them spaces. Yeah, I hate to disagree with you though, but because the Cardwells helped me hang out with a team after the game, after we got smoked in Georgia and all that. But man, I just can't see Cal doing a whole lot. And I hope Cardwell does really good when they win 3 games.
While we're on the subject of win totals, I've got a great stat for you too that I'm going to have you guess, because this has become a pet project of mine in the off season. So it hit me about 5 or 6 years ago that for as good as these preseason publications are, Street and Smiths, Athlons, etc., in providing information.
Did Mark freeze? I think we lost
Mark.
Am I back? Am I okay?
You're back.
Now you're back.
Okay. You guys may have to that's happened twice, I think. So you guys may have to take us home. I don't know what the deal is.
Well, we've done it before.
So yes, you have. And more capably than me, many would say. So so this is 5 or 6 years ago. Just in reviewing these magazines, it hit me. They are all,
and he's gone again.
It's right as he's making his point too. These magazines, they just keep.
What's your favorite magazine, Spencer? Go.
Wow.
I only know the one. It's okay.
Mark, they control YouTube too.
Quick, Mark, try it again.
Quick.
Okay. This can't happen again. I don't know what's going on.
Watch.
Okay.
Well,
my point is that these magazines are too safe on their predictions. And I started to chart this. I started to look at this. Basically, I determined that a 3-game difference in wins and losses from one year to the next was, to me, significant. That was the beginning of a significant drop or a significant increase. If you go from 6-6 to 9-3, you go from 9-3 to 6-6. That's what I considered significant. So I started to log how many teams in the Power 5 and in all of college football, either increase or decrease by at least 3 wins, because I'm charting these magazines and they're predicting no one to do that. They're showing no type of vision to try to predict and get ahead of the curve on anyone. They're basically, and you guys know college football as well as anyone, that I think because the elites stay there, that we have this, it lulls people into thinking like all of college football doesn't change from year to year just because the elites don't change, but the rest of the sport is very fluid.
Even then, USC and
Incredibly.
Washington made drastic jumps.
Exactly. There you go. So out of the 65 Power 5 teams from 2021 to 22, and obviously there are 69 now with a 4 additional in the Big 12, but 65 from 2021 to 22. How many of them either increased their win totals or decreased by at least 3 games from those 2 seasons?
How many amongst 66?
Out of the 65 in the Power 5.
65.
What year did LSU win the title?
2019.
Dang it. So not them. Oh,
Mike,
yeah, actually. Yes.
How many? I'm going to guess, I'm going to say 13. So 1 and 5.
I can think of 6 on top of my head, so I'm going to go higher. 21.
27. 27 teams in the Big 12. 10 teams in the Big 12. 7 of them.
Yeah.
7 out of 10.
I didn't even think of TCU.
TCU, Oklahoma.
Yeah, TCU was a 5-7
Baylor.
football team. Oklahoma went from 11 down
LSU
to
with
5.
Brian Kelly.
Kansas, by the way,
I'm doing regular seasons, but 10-2 for Oklahoma to 6-6. Exactly.
Kansas
LSU,
was
Brian
like
Kelly,
3 to 6
Washington,
wins.
Kalen DeBoer,
Kansas
USC,
2-10
Lincoln
to
Riley.
6-6. Baylor went from 10-2 to 6-6.
Colorado, by the way, went from 4-8 to 1-11.
There you go.
A&M.
27.
Depressing, but
A&M
true.
had a jump down.
Yep,
It was a
A&M
jump.
had a jump down. They went from I think
Yeah.
9 wins to 5.
Yep. 8-4,
You have
5-7.
LSU with Brian Kelly, Washington with
yes.
DeBoer, Lincoln Riley,
Yes.
USC.
27.
27.
Gosh,
Yeah.
I can't believe the Cal Bears are going to be a 7-5 football
There you
team this
go.
fall. I can't believe
Wait, how many games did Cal win last year?
4.
Oh, under. Okay, 1 win. 1 win. Write it down. Idaho. That's their win.
Okay. So it was 27 of the
So that is just to before I cut you off there, Spencer, that is a high number. So I've been doing this for about 5 years, and
Okay.
it's usually in the 18 to 22 range.
Okay, 22. Do you have data on how many teams tend to go up versus how many teams tend to go down, and whether or not there's a variation by conference? This is fascinating.
Well, I would think, because when you think about it, I look at myself, and when I make my preseason predictions, which I take great pride in, like most people, I tend to be conservative because you tend to think they're going to be about the same. And there are a few out there, the Colorados of the world, where you can think, okay, there may be something that really is going to happen here. Or Michigan State last year without Kenneth Walker Jr. and them playing above their heads the year before. Okay, they may drop. But to pick out 27 teams, but I may force myself to find 20 teams this year, and people are going to be telling me how crazy I am. There's no way that's going to happen. There's no way that's going to happen. Well, it is going to happen.
Well, one move can cause that too. You see, Lincoln Riley caused Oklahoma's drop and USC's rise.
And to answer your question, Spencer, I would guess just that the math would play out almost even.
Yeah, that would be your expectation for sure when you're talking about the kind of like second level of college football, right? Like Alabama and Georgia are going to stay on top and be really good, and Michigan, Ohio State. But then, think about like the Big Ten. Iowa's been really good, and then Iowa can fall down. Minnesota's been really good. Minnesota can fall down, and that sort of movement. So if the average
has fallen too far, though, they've lost 1 or 2 more.
So if the average is about 20, then that means per Power 5 conference, you're going to have like 4 teams whose win total changes by 3 games up or down from the year before.
And you're saying past, this is 2021 to now?
Well, no, it's one season to the next. I was just giving you the example from 21 to 22.
Right.
Now take 21 the 22 standings, take the 22 standings and try to find 20 teams that you think in the Power 5 will have that kind of ascension or decline.
I think 21-2 more would have jumped because there was a lot of teams who I can remember at least who got better.
Well,
LSU,
there were more. Mark
USC,
said that.
Washington.
Yeah, Mark said there were 27.
27 who had changes at all. I'm saying
and
I think more would rise than fall.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but there's only so many wins to go around.
Yeah.
Well, there's 3 out of conference games. If you were losing those before.
Meaning you throw everyone together, at least in their conference schedules, they're going to go 500.
Yeah.
So there's only, and then they're going to win. What do you think the Power 5 wins? Well, actually, I know this number because I've charted this as well. Power 5 wins about 85% of the games against the group of 5.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And that stays pretty steady.
Unless we play Boise, then we lose.
Yeah, gosh almighty. But so then the interesting discussion, if the average is around 20 and you figure, disperse it evenly through the 5 conferences, 4 teams are going to change up or down in the Pac-12, their win total by 3 games. Colorado would definitely be a candidate there. I wonder about Arizona State. Could they go?
I was going to say them next too.
I got a hot take for the down.
Okay.
Utah.
Okay. It's not the most ridiculous thing in the world for 2 reasons. Number 1, their schedule is brutal. They open with Florida at home, and they go at Baylor the following week.
Yeah.
Their FCS opponent's Weber State. That won't be a problem. They're a good FCS school, but regardless, Utah is not going to lose that game. But
UCLA
Cam Rising's health might affect the Florida game, could also affect the Baylor game in week 2. Now, Utah a year ago was a 9-3 football team. Mm-hmm. Would they go down to 6-6? It's like you said, Mark. You say it out loud, and you're like,
"It seems ridiculous."
I don't know. I don't want to dip my toe into those particular waters. Like 2-time defending Pac-12 champions, could they really fall back to 6-6? I could see him going, depending on how long Cam Rising's out. If they have quarterback issues and Cam Rising goes down, then yeah, of course. Like anything is possible for them there.
UCLA is a really interesting one because, they lost DTR, but also they got who I think is the best prospect from the last class.
True, but how much of an impact can you expect them to have as a true freshman?
Shoot. Plenty of quarterbacks have had impacts as true freshmen in every conference but the Pac-12.
He looks very good. Dante Moore, it looks really, really, really good. I'm with you on that, but
young quarterbacks have big impacts in every conference but ours.
You know a team I would look at as a 2 or 3 movement down from a year ago? I wonder about Washington State.
What did they win last year? 6 games?
They were 7-5.
7?
I wonder about Washington State because, number 1, it's a tough place to win. And number 2, they had some key losses in the transfer portal. They do keep Cam Ward around, which is really, really big for them, and he's great. But their offensive line last year was pretty bad. It was pretty darn bad.
They got a couple decent transfers.
Yeah, they don't run the ball consistently.
They got 2 easy wins.
Colorado does?
Yeah, Washington State. They have Colorado State and Northern Colorado as 2 of their out-of-conference games.
Yeah, that's hard to see. I'd be hard-pressed to see him going back down to 4 with Cam Ward and Jake Dickert is there with the defense and whatnot.
Yeah, you're gonna win. You're gonna get 2 free wins, basically.
You know one that could be interesting? UCLA pulling back to go 6-6.
UCLA is a tough pick.
I could see that though. You got quarterback questions for a guy who was so integral to what they did last year and so darn good. So I could see UCLA. The other team that I could see going upwards,
portal class was so good though,
is Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona.
Every time Spencer spits out a team, I'm right there with him. Arizona, 8-4.
Like, could Arizona be an 8-4 team?
Yeah,
they went 1-11.
Got a conference game.
They went 1-11. They went 5-7. I would watch for that Mississippi State game because I don't know how
they go to Starkville.
Yeah, they go to Starkville, but Mississippi State pulled away late in that game in Tucson a year ago, and they were the overall better team. But Arizona has added some nice portal pieces. Jaden Delora is back. He's swarmed by controversy and whatnot right now, which is not great, but it looks like he's going to be allowed to play. If they block out that noise and whatnot, he's got real weapons. There's Justin Flo there on defense. I haven't checked in on their portal class super recently, but you look at, what a gradual build looks like. Like, look at Oregon State. They were a 1-win team. They were a 2-win team. They were a 5-win team. They were a 7-win team. They were a 10-win team, right? It was a slow, steady build. And Arizona could be on that trajectory. If you told me right now,
tough schedule though.
It's not easy. I fully grant that it is not easy. You got to go at USC and at Washington State back-to-back weeks. That is super tough. But
you're at a Colorado team who's more on your level than the rest of the conference. You're
two out of your last. First of all, they beat UCLA last year, so they're capable of playing with some pretty solid teams. Like, if you can score points, you can be dangerous. I don't think NAU and UTEP in their home building give them any problems there. If they can win that Mississippi State game, I could see them being a 7-8 win team, because their defense just needs to improve. It doesn't have to be good, because their offense is going to produce. They had like a top 15 passing offense in the country last year.
I think the Wazoo or Oregon State games are more pivotal than that Mississippi State game.
I think those matter, and you have to get one of them. But I think if you were
liable to start 3-1 at worst,
if you were going to make the 3-win jump that we are talking about, I think Mississippi State would have to happen for them.
I think Flo is going to be a perfect fit there too, though. Flo's main issue was, coverage concepts and the schemes that Oregon was running.
Yeah,
if he can just play see-ball, get-ball football, he can change games for a team who doesn't have the most talented defense.
So yes, he can still be a solid player, but I don't think he looks the same physically since that injury from the 2021 season.
I've wanted him to move to edge since when he got to Eugene.
I think he looked a step slower than he did as a true freshman, or as a redshirt freshman, I guess, because he missed 2020 as well. But like that Fresno State game, he was flying around the field making plays, 14 tackles and a forced fumble. But then he got hurt, and then when he came back this year, I don't think he ever had the same explosive step. He even looked less athletic than some other guys on the field at
put
times.
him at edge.
I would have as well. I talked about that on my show last year. At times I was like, we're not getting any production from the edge position. But here's a question for you, Mike. Do you know what PFF graded Justin Flo in coverage last year?
Well, I can answer you by saying I have the word PFF blocked on my Twitter account.
Okay, but look, I sometimes look at their ratings and think,
I used to love them. I used to worship them, and then they sold off, and then I was like, okay,
I wouldn't say worship, but I think overall they do a lot of really good work, and stuff tends to I think be accurate far more often than not. But still, what do you think, if you had to take a guess, what was Justin Flo's coverage grade in 2022?
Really bad.
Wait, like pick a number.
I don't know if they still do it the same way they did it in 2017.
So anything over 70 is a good number. Anything over 80
so it used to be anything over 50 was good.
Yeah, no. So the way that they have it structured now, anything over 70 is good or above average. Anything over 80 is like high level. If you do anything over 90, you're going to be in the NFL really, really quickly.
This is tough because I think he was making the right decisions, just too slow.
What do you think? I'm just curious what you would guess the number. Way lower.
20s?
32.
Yeah. What was Sewell? Sewell probably wasn't much better. He got
Sewell was close to 70.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I would have put any of our linebackers at close to a good grade in pass coverage.
Yeah. I mean, I think Sewell took a lot of flack. Bossa graded really poorly as well a season ago. Like, Oregon's linebackers have to be better. You won't find any disagreement with
Sewell was going to get the flack because he was a first-round graded talent. Who else was going to get the flack? The guy who had a first-round grade on him, or
that's true. Like, he was the leader, but like Sewell had a down year in the eyes of fans and was second team All Pac-12. That's not bad.
A lot of defensively across the entire country, a lot of guys had down years. Keely Ringo had a down year.
That's true. It is generally harder to play defense, but it's also, not the first time we've seen a really talented player have a down year. Like
what they called back in Mark's day, the sophomore slump is now the junior slump.
Yeah, Mikael Wright underwent the same thing. Like, Wright was good as a freshman. He was great as a sophomore. And then he came in his junior year.
Junior slump.
He had the junior slump. He didn't even get drafted. I thought he was looking like an early round corner early in his career, had all the measurables to be that, and he's, I think, playing in the CFL right now. It's hard to explain that stuff sometimes. But
last year, Sewell, I am from what I saw, Sewell got torched by everybody. To what Larry had said in the chat.
Well, everybody on the defense got torched.
Everybody except for
Christian Gonzalez.
Gonzo and somebody else actually looked pretty good. Triquez
Brian
looked
Addison.
pretty good. I like how Triquez looked last year.
Oh, Triquez got the first half of the season was not great. The second half was a pretty darn good corner. I mean, like a really, really good corner, I thought. And he played very well in the bowl game too. Like, I feel good about Triquez coming into this year. I think he could have an all Pac-12 season.
How you feel about them recruiting my state more? They had Tosh down in Florida today. They have a boy down there. He was in Polk County, yeah.
Do you know who he's going after?
I know he visited what's his name? The defensive lineman at IMG, David Stone.
Oh, David. Yeah.
We have the commit. We have the commit in Tampa, Dallas Wilson. We just had a 5-star visit from Tallahassee and Jamie French Jr. There's a few players that Oregon was considering an offer previously. So I know that the old offensive line coach, Clem, was considering offering a tight end out here, but I don't know if they really need a tight end at this point with what they're going to do in the portal and the guys they're after. So there's a few guys in this area. He was in the Tampa to Orlando area.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think David Stone's the kind of guy that you're going to need to anchor the interior once Brandon Dorless leaves. Like, you don't have
hard to get him from Oklahoma.
They what?
It's going to be hard to keep him from Oklahoma.
David Stone?
Yeah, he's from there.
We should try and convince him that Oregon's cooler.
As someone who's lived in both, they're both the same. One's just green, one's just brown.
I have also lived in both, by the way, and it's not an inaccurate assessment.
It's green nothing or brown nothing. Like it's.
Well, I think Oregon's got a little bit more of a majestic landscape to it than Oklahoma.
That's just all the weed smoke in the air.
Well, like
it's legal there. Like, hey,
like I went to the cities that anyone would go to in Oklahoma, and Central Oregon is cooler.
Which one would you go to in Oklahoma other than
Tulsa and Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
The only actual cities in Oklahoma. And I liked them, by the way.
Like Mike's neck of the wood, going to Ohio and going to Akron instead of Cincinnati or Cleveland.
Hey, now let's not cut on Ohio. You got some serious metropolitan areas in Ohio. When's the last time you've been to Ohio there, Mike?
2020.
Okay. Well, it's only
I go there for work every
fairly
once in a while.
recently. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus.
Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Akron, and then there's another small town south of Akron. I can't remember the name of.
Canton?
Yes. That's what Hall of Fame is, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's a small town? Like 150,000 people?
Well, a lot of my properties are in Toronto and Chicago and Detroit. So those are the big towns.
A small town is where I lived in Oklahoma, 2,800. That's a small town.
I got you beat where I lived in Indiana, 263.
No.
Wheatfield, Indiana, home of Fairlife Milk.
So
263?
When you left the city limits, like, was there like vast wasteland to get to the next?
There was just corn
of anything.
There was just corn on one side.
So you were completely isolated with 260 people. Like, it's one thing to live in a town of, like, I grew up in a town of 30,000, but as soon as you crossed the line, you went into a town of 50,000. Like, we were surrounded. Like,
there was one
area was like 1 million people.
Yeah, no, there was one school, K through 12. We couldn't field an entire football team, so we mixed with like the next city over, which was also like 400 people.
You knew everybody.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we went to the dairy. We lived on a dairy farm there. Then we moved to a ranch in Oregon, and then we're like, hey, let's go to Lakeland, Florida.
Where in Oregon were you on a ranch?
Jefferson.
Oh, okay. So like Central Oregon area, central-ish.
You probably didn't have a grocery store.
We had one grocery store. It was called Tyson's. It wasn't big. It was pretty small. It was more like
everyone had to go to. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody went there. It was right by the one gas station. And right by The closest, this is how I tell everybody how remote it is. The closest Walmart was an hour and a half away.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. See, where I was closest Walmart was 35 minutes.
And an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
Larry, you're 50 miles from Lakeland? Well,
I was
stay
2
away
I
from
was
Lakeland
2
because
hours
it
from
sucks.
Costco and Trader Joe's, which is tough.
I didn't even know what those were back then.
Costco and when you were in India. Yeah, of course.
I didn't know what those were. I didn't know. I worked for Publix, and when I applied, I thought it was a liquor store. It's not a liquor store. People love their Publix out here, man.
It is crazy.
Oh goodness. I think I got to call it there for the night, but I think we've reached a solid endpoint.
Absolutely. We've reached an end point. Yes.
And we've reached an endpoint.
We went from football to where has Mike lived?
Where
in
can
the
my
world does Mike
wasteland
fly?
trump your wasteland?
Yeah,
That's where we've
facts.
gone. Spencer, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate
welcome, Mark.
you, and certainly let people know what you're up to.
Yeah, I host Locked On Ducks and Locked On Pac-12 Monday through Friday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can hit me up on Twitter at Smalls_55. DMs and mentions wide open. Mark, it's always a fun time. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Mike, what do you have going on?
Yeah, so right now I'm just tweeting and probably upsetting people on Twitter. It's what I've been good at for many years now. And I have something in the works for the fifth quarter YouTube channel, but I don't know when exactly that's going to be coming out. So keep an eye out for that. There's going to be some Oregon players involved there too.
Folks, we've got Tony Altimore's little display with Michigan football coming up tomorrow night with his academics, athletics, and football program breakdown on the metrics there at Michigan. That's our next in line. So please join us for that. Spencer, appreciate you. Mike as well. We will catch you guys soon. And you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. Go Ducks.
Likewise.